My name really is Michael Jackson, but I don't sing and I don't drink Pepsi. I drink beer. That's what I do for a living. I travel the world sampling beers and writing about the ones that I've enjoyed. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. Belgium has always had a bit of an identity problem. Perhaps it's because the northerners here speak a version of Dutch and the southerners speak French. In fact, the Belgians can't agree on anything much. They say there's only one thing that really unites them, their devotion to beer. This temple-like building is the Brewers Guild House in Brussels. In no other country do brewers have such an imposing headquarters, such an elaborate testament to the beer maker's art. In Belgium, you'll find a staggering variety of beers. Beers made with fruit, beers seasoned with spices, beers made in farmhouses, beers made in monasteries. Each is served in a different shaped glass, as with differing styles of wine. Belgian beers are presented like wines. They sometimes taste like wines. They often look like wines, and the Belgians call them the Burgundies of Belgium. Wine and beer should be companions of honor. One is the drink of the warm, grape-growing south of Europe, the other of the cooler, grain-growing north. Belgium's in the middle and takes the best from both worlds. The Art Nouveau and 1920s cafes of Brussels may have the ambiance of a Parisian saloon, but the elegant aperitif is always beer. In Belgium, food is never far away, and a good bistro is proud to announce its house beer. There'll be a beer list as well. After all, which beer you choose may depend upon what you fancy eating. In Belgium, beer goes with much more than just sauerkraut and sausages. The Belgians like to cook with beer too, and not just in beef stews. Cuisine de la bière is a recognized department of serious gastronomy. I'm on my way to a rather unusual dinner, a meal that really arouses my appetite. Every dish is going to be cooked with beer as an ingredient, a different beer for every dish. And every course is going to be served with beer instead of wine, a different beer to accompany every course. Pierre Fontaine is chef patron of the Bruegel, a Michelin-starred restaurant just outside Bruges. He likes occasionally to prepare a special meal with beer, and I've asked him to prepare one for me. As guests, I've invited some of the friends I've made in Belgium in my years as a beer hunter. People whose knowledge helped give me such a love for Belgian beer.
Yeah, it all depends on the taste.
Madame Rose runs a renowned brown ale brewery. Frank Bone specializes in the particularly Belgian art of beer blending.
I especially like Framboise and Kriek, really.
Roger Mouche is a brewing scientist.
Family of beers, I like.
Leander Brown runs a specialty beer cafe. And René Lindemans makes beer in his own brewery.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a sur le menu ce soir?
Ce soir, nous avons, Michael, le lapin fontaine à la bière, parce que chez nous en Belgique, nous aimons beaucoup la cuisine à la bière.
Ah oui, moi aussi, naturellement. C'est bon?
Oui, je vous en prie, goûtez.
Ah bon, c'est de quelle bière?
C'est la bière de Golden Bowl de Liefmans, qui est une des meilleures bières sur le marché, et surtout pour faire la cuisine. Elle donne un très bon goût.
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec bière dans la cuisine? Tout le monde connaît cuisine du vin, mais cuisine de la bière, qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
Oui, on peut faire de la bière des marinades aussi. Et la marinade, on peut faire donc les vinaigres, les marinades. On les emploie aussi pour des pâtes, pour faire lever les pâtes.
Ah oui, bon, comme Yorkshire pudding aussi.
Voilà, c'est exactement. Donc, hein, au lieu d'employer la levure pure, on emploie la bière et qui fait monter les pâtes.
Et pour boire, aimez-vous les bières pour boire aussi?
Ah oui, bien sûr.
Tous les chefs aiment les vins, naturellement. Mais
oui, mais la bière est très appréciée en cuisine, surtout que de temps en temps, on a quelquefois chaud. Alors la bière désaltère mieux que le vin.
Ah, ça, c'est le moment pour une bonne bière.
Certainement.
If you smell it, you can smell the stone of the cherry, of the fruit.
That's that sort of almondy character.
Almondy, yeah.
Very fruity.
Yeah, you can be. But
Well, I think the nose is a good
the nose is
indication.
bad, forget the taste.
This beer is made with cherries. It's a very welcoming beer as well, and a very sophisticated beer, I'd feel. But it's made by the oldest brewing process that you can find anywhere in Europe, and it's a process that's used only here in Belgium.
Cherry beer, or Kriek, is a classic Belgian style, but it's derived from a more basic brew called Lambiek. Lambiek beers take their name from the town of Lembeek, which lies in the Senne Valley, in an area known as Pajottenland. Although it's only a few kilometers from Brussels, the capital of a harmonized Europe, the landscape remains stubbornly Flemish.
How old is the brewery?
Oh, between 100 and 200 years.
René Lindemans is one of 10 or a dozen brewers who make Lambiek beer. This is the most basic method of brewing used anywhere in the developed world. It's so fundamental that it would seem anachronistic to brewers anywhere else. The process starts in the malt barn.
This is where all beer begins, with malted barley. That's barley that's been partly germinated in order to release its fermentable sugars. But some beers also contain a proportion of wheat. And it's wheat that helps to give the tart, quenching summer beer character to the beer they make here, Lambiek beer.
The grains of malted barley, and in this case the wheat grains too, are milled together, producing what's known as the grist, grist from the mill. The grist is added to hot water to make an infusion. As the grains are stirred, they give up their natural sugars, which are absorbed in the hot liquid. Hops are another essential ingredient. They grow on vines and their cones are dried before being added to the brew. The hops are a seasoning. To the sweetness of the grains, they add a balancing dryness in aroma and palate. Well, that's their usual job.
Most brewers want their hops to be as fresh and aromatic as possible when they put them in their beer. But Lambiek brewers are using hops for a different reason. for a much older purpose. They're using the hops as a preservative in the beer, and they actually don't want hop taste and hop aroma. So they do something that other brewers would regard as utterly absurd. They use 6 times as many hops as a normal brewer, but they age them for 3 years specifically to get the taste and aroma out of them. It's just another remarkable feature in this most idiosyncratic of beer styles.
The liquid has been drained and transferred to the brew kettle. This is where the hops are added and the brew is boiled. The boiling sterilizes the brew and extracts the essential oils and resins from the hops. There aren't many breweries left anywhere in the world with coal-fired kettles, but Runny Lindemans has never been persuaded to change. Lambic beers are boiled for 5 hours rather than the more usual hour and a half.
After 5 hours in the brew kettle, the brew goes into this open cooler. In the making of beer, every little twist and turn in the procedure creates a different character in the finished product.
Where Lambic differs most from other beers is in its life force, the final essential of all beers, its yeast. Invisible to the naked eye, wild yeasts live in every atmosphere, and the strains that are dominant in this valley are used to ferment the Lambic beers. Only the Lambic brewers have persisted with the use of wild yeasts. Everywhere else, brewers have long used pure strains cultured in a laboratory. The wild yeasts are allowed to enter the room and have their way with the brew as it lies cooling. The consummation lasts all night long. Then the brew is laid down in wooden barrels to ferment. Wild yeasts live inside the brewery too, and play a vital role in continuing fermentation. Most brewers would be horrified at this sight. For them, cleanliness is next to godliness. Wild yeast's a disruptive, deadly enemy. But Lambic brewers enjoy consorting with the devil, and they won't move a cobweb for fear of disturbing him. No other type of beer has its principal fermentation in the barrel, nor does any other style of beer ferment and mature for so long. British ale is ready in 2 or 3 weeks at the most, a classic lager in 2 or 3 months, but a Lambic can be in the wood for a year, or even 2 or 3 years.
After 1 season in the wood, some of this beer will be sold to local cafes and bars as pure, young Lambic, but more of the beer will sit in the brewery for a longer period. And for that beer, there are more interesting encounters in store.
To produce the classic Creek beer, cherries are added to create a further fermentation and to add their fruity, almondy flavour. Other Lambic variations are made with raspberries or even peaches. Even bottling is not the final stage. Pure Lambic beers of different ages are often blended before being bottled. In the bottle, a further fermentation takes place. The result is a highly distinct Lambic variation called Gurza. It strikes me that these are not so much the Burgundies as the champagnes of the beer world.
Dryness without acidity.
But it is dry,
It is very dry.
a sort of Fino sherry
Yeah,
dryness.
Sherry dryness.
I sometimes think of Gurza beer being like that, of having the taste of a Fino sherry, but the sparkle of a champagne.
The mix of both, yeah.
A combination of the
Combination,
world's two
yes.
greatest aperitif drinks in one beer. Well, toast everybody, bon appetit everybody.
Cheers.
Eet smakelijk.
Ja, you know, so Flemish too?
Good exercise, yeah.
Oh, I have my little secret. I think the reason that the Gers beer works well with the terrine is that the Gers has this dry tartness which balances out the
Yeah.
slightly fatty richness of the terrine.
It's
I
very
wasn't
good
sure.
balance. The terrine and the beer is very well. Mariage parfait, as they say.
I wasn't sure whether it was going to work, but I think in the end it did. How long has Lambic beer been brewed?
I think that would be difficult to say since since always.
Always.
But the first written recipe is from 1516. That's the first recipe of Lambic.
Lambic beer existed when Bruegel was creating his images of peasant life. In the communities where he painted, the beer is still served, and the people don't seem to have changed much either. Frank Bone, who lives in Lembeek and blends Lambic beers, took me to the Café Congo.
But why is it called the Congo?
Well, it's called the Congo because it's on a hill about 1.5–2 kilometers from the center of Lambic, and maybe Congo is far away.
Can't be many places left where you can get Lambic on draft in the... This looks pretty good, doesn't it? Thank you, Val.
Some more.
Yeah.
Een beetje bij.
Anything else?
Alsjeblieft.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you.
Well posed. The unblended Lambic, which is only sold around here, is that still very much a people's drink, as it always was?
Well, in a part, but only in a few cafes where it's still sold, and the Gueuze and Kriek became mostly a luxurious beer, and it is sold as a specialty more than as a beer for the common people in the places.
I was once reading an art book with lots of pictures of Bruegel, and it said wine was being poured, and I thought, well, it's not wine, I'm sure it's Lambic beer.
I'm sure there was no wine at these feasts in Bruegel time, and they used to, as they use today, buying kegs of Lambic for a feast, killing a beast and then roasting it, and then with some beer, Lambic.
It's good beer.
Lovely.
Lovely. Beautiful. Beautiful glass, beautiful beer.
There are, of course, other Belgian beers. This is Duvel, light in colour but very high in alcohol. We're drinking it to accompany a dish of cod served with hop shoots and cooked with another classic style of Belgian beer.
Only in Belgium.
La sauce que vous mangez, ce sabayon, est fait avec
C'est magnifique. Le cabillaud, c'est très très bon. C'est toujours très bon.
Est-ce que vous goûtez bien le goût de la bière, donc de la triple?
C'est délicat, mais oui. C'est possible de goûter maintenant un peu?
Oui, je vais vous faire.
Est-ce que vous avez un verre?
Voilà, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. L'arôme, c'est très bon. Hein? This beer is a Lambic beer. This beer is a very strong, fruity, golden-coloured ale in a style made famous by a Trappist monastery not very far from here. It's a style of beer called Trappist Triple. Although quite a number of breweries make beer in this style, this particular one is made in a brewery very near here in Bruges. It's just one of the many district beers in this country of 100 or 150 district beers, every one of them highly distinctive and all rather wonderful too.
It's very old, this beer. You can taste it. It's very old.
Yes, you can taste it in the Grand Cru, sure.
It's a blending with very old and younger beer. But the very old beer is very old.
Yes,
You
and the
can
Grand
smell
Cru is highly the very old beer.
By now, you'll hardly be surprised to encounter a beer whose name includes the words Grand Cru. It's one of my favourites, and to explain why, I have to use the sort of allusions normally used in describing wine.
I might have Lafitte with Rabbit.
Wine and beer are equally complex, and in both, the greatest pleasure goes to the drinker who is alert to their full ranges of tastes.
What about passion fruit? Do you get passion fruit in the nose at all?
Yes, maybe a little bit of passion fruit, while it was not made with passion fruit.
Oh no, its character just comes from the maturation.
Yeah,
procedure.
maturation.
If you went into a pub and started sticking your nose into your pint, and especially if you began to talk about passion fruit, you might be politely escorted out of the place, if you were lucky. Sometimes it seems a bit odd to talk about the bouquet in beer, but every brewer goes to a great deal of trouble to put a very bouquet into his beer. It's an important part of the art of brewing. And when I'm tasting a beer, I'm looking for the bouquet, the palate, and also afterwards, I want that palate, that flavour of the beer, to linger a little. I want to know that I've had a beer. I want to experience the aftertaste, or what brewers and beer hunters call the finish. Because tasting beer is a very three-dimensional exercise, just like tasting any food or drink is. You use all of your senses. You use your nose, you use your eyes,
The color is perfect.
and then you use your taste as well. In fact, you can use another sense. You can listen to your beer if you do this. That's how you bring the fourth sense into it. Recognize the passion fruit now?
Meneer die nog niet had.
Ja, maar
Madame eerst, madame eerst.
we zitten weer in een twee sterren hotel, hè? Of een twee sterren restaurant. Eerste dames.
But nice, nice. Taste is in it. No, you put beer.
This is a rich, dark beer made by Trappist monks. It's called Rochefort Trappiste.
Frank heeft twee kinderen, hè?
It's a nice beer, isn't it? Very port-like, I think, and that's why I very deliberately chose it to go with the cheese, because it port and blue cheese, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's one of the delights of beer hunting to discover that somewhere there's a beer to complement any food, even a dessert. And you don't have to cook a dinner as fancy as this. It can be fun just to experiment a little, to discover that there is more than one style of beer, even in the humblest local. And each brew has its own merits, its own mood, its own moment. You don't have to sip them all at one sitting, of course. It's not quantity that makes great beer, it's quality and variety.
That's good, eh?
That's very good.
Good dessert beer.
Would you like anything else, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, I think I'll have a scotch, please.
Of course, sir.
When you ask for a scotch in Belgium, they don't bring you a whiskey. But I can forgive them for that, because what they do bring you is a beer, a Scotch ale.
It's a particularly strong, rich, delicious Scotch ale. It's made in Scotland, but you can't buy it there. If you want to try it, you have to come to Belgium. I think it's worth it, especially since they serve it in this lovely thistle-shaped glass. And after a lovely meal like this, I don't really know whether to say à votre santé, Prost, or be a little Scottish perhaps and say Slangevar. I think since we're in Flanders, I'll say Prost. Prost, everybody. Thank you for a wonderful meal. Did everybody enjoy this meal?
Oh, we did love it. We did.